that because of what I've experienced. Wouldn't it be good to be able to ring up a journalist and say, hey, treat seriously these cases. Give them a decent go. Don't shortchange the world on the evidence of these stories, because if they're presented for their truth, they can transform this world. That was going through my mind. So he goes there and he did it. He came back the next day and he says, Ron, he says, you were right. I went there, I said that prayer, and do you know that last night I got a job in radio and television that afternoon? You know, and then of course he thinks, you know, you were right, Ron, and then of course he gets the job and then, oh yeah, maybe it was coincidence, you know, maybe it was just time for them, you know. It's hard for him to win, it's hard for God to win these battles. But it was, for me, another bolster in my confidence in being able to assert that Jesus is there, he's lonely there, he's waiting for someone to turn up, and in fact he'll give him almost anything you ask for, particularly if it's for him. And I think that that's the problem we have now, is that there is such a lack of belief in the real presence, and the belief that when Jesus said he would remain with us until the end of time, that he would do that in the Eucharist. Now tomorrow you're going to see the Eucharist documentary, which was made as a product of these thoughts and the ambition to try and change people's attitude about how they view the Eucharist. I know they're going to give me the roundup in a minute, but I want to just give you a sneak preview of something else that's going to be very interesting to you. This whole story of the heart, the suffering of the heart, is something which merges into the concept of the Sacred Heart devotion and the Divine Mercy devotion. If Jesus, through this Eucharist, is showing to us his heart, that it suffers, we know that the heart is a symbol of love. We know that the suffering that he suffers is reflecting our ingratitude, it's reflecting our lack of reciprocation of the love that he shows us. And the whole concept of the Divine Mercy devotion, which is to acknowledge his passion, which was to empathise with what he went through in return for his mercy, is part of the way I believe that you console the suffering heart of Jesus. There's a lot, I think, that theologians and priests will be able to draw from these Eucharistic miracles, which demonstrate the love of God and the suffering in the Eucharist, that ties in with the Divine Mercy devotion and the Sacred Heart devotion. I'm going to fast forward now to the future work that we're doing. Everyone has probably heard of the Shroud of Turin. You've probably heard more people saying it's a fraud than it's for real. Well, let me tell you, there's so much going for it to be real, I wouldn't listen to those who say it's going to be a fraud. But I honestly believe that one of the final means of verification of the authenticity of the shroud will be in the examination of the blood. On that shroud is not only an image, but also blood, and it's real blood. It's blood from a person who's suffered. There's a lot that can be said scientifically about that, the blood on the shroud. There you see the image of the shroud, the photograph when it was taken, when photography was first invented, which revealed a hidden secret about what was lay in the information that lay in the cloth that wasn't visible until photography was invented. I think in the same way, the blood on the shroud will be like a time capsule that will, when science develops, as you see now it's happening with the examination of blood, that it will be able to be the final determinant of the authenticity of the shroud. Now, if you look on the screen, on the top right-hand screen, that's the Eucharistic miracle of Argentina. You see those white blood cells I was telling you about. And you also remember me saying to you about how great modern science is that can look at a cell and inside it there's a world of its own, how great it is. It's something that 20 years ago, 30 years could never have been anticipated. Well, inside that cell is information, and when you do a DNA test to determine your profile, you find in the nucleus the information which is the contribution from your mother and your father, and that is the code, the resultant code is yours. The question is, why is it we can't get a profile, a genetic profile from the nucleus of the cell here? And one explanation may well be that if we did get a genetic code from this blood, it would mean that there is a profile that's been exhibited that's been produced by a mother and father in union. And I think it would be unlikely that God would allow science to finally confirm through science that Jesus was not born of a virgin. So it may be good news that we can't get a profile. There's more work to be done on that, and the analysis may have to work on the mitochondrial DNA from outside the nucleus. That's another story. But if these stories have happened and it's Eucharist that's produced flesh and blood, we know that it has to be the blood of Jesus. It has to be something. It must be his blood, particularly if it's human and it's come in this context in this powerful way. And ultimately I believe that there will be able to be found a match in some form between the blood in that Eucharistic miracle and the blood on the Shroud of Turin. The image down the bottom is also blood from a statue of Christ that cried in Bolivia that we've been studying, which also won't yield the genetic profile of its author. Normally you have a problem of getting a profile from a cell if the cell is dissolved, if it's degraded. But the cells in the images there are not degraded. They should have information in it. The fact that we aren't may be indicating this problem. But I'm going to leave you with this nice thought. The consequences if those two bloods match. The blood on the right-hand side, or was the left-hand side on your screen there, is the blood from a man who has died. Jesus' blood on his cross from his crucifixion, from a dead man. But the blood on the right-hand side of the screen is blood from the same person, but now living. The white blood cells show that this is from a living person. So the person who was once dead is now alive in the Eucharist. And isn't that a nice thought to end on? If there's time for any questions, I'm happy to answer them. No time for